The gates opened with a sound Jungkook had heard in his dreams for 3 years. Metal scraping against metal, sunlight spilled in through the widening gap. Real sunlight, not the pale imitation that filtered through barred windows. It hit his eyes, harsh and honest, and he instinctively lifted a hand to shield them. He had forgotten how bright the world was. 3 years ago, he had walked in, with his soul in pieces. Now he stepped forward slowly, as if afraid the ground outside might reject him. The warmth touched his skin, actual warmth. He closed his eyes. Air filled his lungs differently out here, freer, wider. It smelled of dust, trees, life moving forward without waiting for him. Memories crashed into him without permission. Wayne's tears in court, his daughter's first cry, the way he had knelt on a hospital floor begging. His chest tightened. He opened his eyes again and looked up at the sky. He wasn't the same man who had entered. He exhaled slowly, squaring his shoulders. Somewhere beyond those walls a little girl was 3 years old, and a woman he loved had survived without him. He stepped fully into the light. He took another step forward, and then he saw her. Wayne stood a little away from the gates, just beyond the shadow they cast. No crowd, no drama, just her waiting, alone. She hadn't changed in the ways he feared she would. She still stood the same way, shoulders straight, hands loosely clasped in front of her, as if holding herself together out of habit. But there was a quiet strength in her now. For a moment Jungkook couldn't move. 3 years collapsed into a single breath. She had come. After everything, she had come. Wayne lifted her eyes and met his gaze. No anger, no accusation. Just something soft and steady that made his chest ache. Neither of them spoke. Cars passed behind her. Life moved on around them. But the space between them felt untouched by time. Jungkook swallowed hard. He wanted to run to her. He didn't. He wanted to apologize again. He didn't. He simply stood there in the sunlight, looking at the woman who had once loved him enough to stand against him and still chose to wait. And in that quiet moment, Jungkook understood something. Waiting is also a form of love. Why do you love me this much, Ryan? He finally found his voice. He asked quietly. The words felt heavy, leaving his mouth. He shook his head once, almost in disbelief. I don't deserve it. Wine didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer, close enough for him to feel her presence, but not close enough to touch. Her eyes searched his face for the man standing there now. Maybe you don't, but love isn't a reward. It's a choice. I don't love what you did. I never will. But I love the part of you that felt guilty enough to change. That part that went away instead of fighting to stay. Jungkook's eyes filled again. And because my daughter deserves a father who learned the cost of his mistakes. Silence wrapped around them. Jungkook lowered his head, tears spilling free, not of despair this time, but of something gentler. And then, suddenly she moved. Before Jungkook could react, Wayne stepped into him and wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his chest like it was muscle memory her body had never forgotten. The impact knocked the breath out of him. No words, no promises, just two people standing in the open, the past behind them, the future still unwritten, holding on, not because everything was healed, but because they had survived. She stayed silent. His breath became uneven. Did you, did you come just to see me leave again? Tell me the truth. Did you forgive me? I had my punishment. I paid for what I did. Every single day in there. I forgive you the day I stood in the courtroom. You remember how my hands were shaking? I still stood there because I chose truth over fear. And my mom and dad, they forgive you the day you didn't fight the punishment. I was so scared you had hate me, that my daughter would grow up hating her father. Ryan reached for his trembling hands and held them tightly. He hesitated, then asked in a trembling voice, Ryan, our daughter, is she okay? Ryan nodded softly. She's more than okay. She's 3 now. I missed everything, didn't I? She looks like you. Those big eyes, that stubborn little frown when she's angry. Jungkook let out a shaky breath, pressing his hand to his chest. Does she? Does she knows about me? I told her you'll came back, and you'll love her. Tears spilled freely now. Does she hate me? Is she scared of me? He asked in a broken whisper. Wyan shook her head immediately. No, she asks about you every night. She says, come soon, Dada. Jungkook covered his face, sobbing quietly. I don't deserve her, either of you. Wyan stepped closer and held his face. Force, can I see her? Even from far? Just once. Wyan smiled through her tears and nodded. I told her that I am going to take her, Dada. He nodded again with tears. What is her name, Wyan? Kia. That's her name, Jungkook. Wyan took him home. The house felt the same. Familiar walls, familiar silence. But Jungkook felt like a stranger standing inside a life he had once shuttered. In the living room, her parents were already seated. Her mother rose first. She looked at Jungkook for a long second, then smiled, soft, tired, but genuine. Come in. Her father remained seated, back straight, hands clasped together. His jaw was tight, eyes unreadable. Wyan stood beside Jungkook, close enough for him to feel her presence. No one spoke. The silence stretched awkward, heavy, full of things that had no easy words. Finally, Mrs. Kim broke it. How are you, Jungkook? Alive and grateful that you let me stand here. Her mother noted, eyes softening. Her father didn't say anything, only gave a short, stiff nod. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. And for Jungkook, that was more than had hoped for. Jungkook took a slow breath, gathering the little courage he had left. How are you, Mom, Dad? He finally asked, voice low and unsteady. Wyan held his hand as no one answered. Her mother's expression softened even more. We are managing. Life doesn't stop, Jungkook. Her father looked at their hands, then at Jungkook. Jungkook nodded, eyes lowering in respect. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence wasn't hostile. It was cautious, careful, like people standing on the edge of something fragile, unsure but willing to take the next step. Jungkook's throat tightened. His eyes simmered as he forced the words out. Kia? Can I see her, Dad? For a moment, Mr. Kim gave no reaction at all. His face unreadable, rigid like a wall didn't dare push. Mrs. Kim gently touched her husband's elbow, a quiet plea. He let out a slow sigh. You will be monitored, Mr. Kim said finally, voice firm. Jungkook nodded immediately. Mr. Kim looked at Jungkook once more. Don't make us regret this. Jungkook bowed his head deeply. I won't, he promised, voice shaking but sincere. Wyan walked him to Kia's room. She stopped in front of a small room and gently pushed the door open. Inside, 3-year-old Kia sat on the floor, completely surrounded by crayons, paintbrushes, and open paint jars. Colors were everywhere on the floor, on the wall, on her clothes, even simmered across her tiny arms and cheeks. One small finger was dipped into a paint can. With absolute seriousness, Kia pressed that painty finger on her chest, leaving a bright, uneven mark, her little masterpiece. Then she looked up. Her big eyes widened, noticed them standing there. The room went quiet. Jungkook froze at the doorway. Breath caught in his throat, heart pounding. He was sure everyone could hear it. Wyan stayed beside him, her hand gently resting on his arm. Kia tilted her head, studying him with innocent curiosity. And in that moment, Jungkook knew this was the most terrifying and beautiful second of his life. Kia suddenly brightened. She crawled clumsily towards Wyan, paint seamed hands and knees leaving little colorful trails behind her. Mamma, she called happily. Wyan sighed, folding her arms. Kia, look at you. What have you done? Paint everywhere again? Kia paused, blinking up at her mother. Then smiled innocently, as if that alone can fix everything. Jungkook stood there, heart in his throat. Then Kia turned, her painterly fingers lifted, pointing straight at him. Dada, she said clearly. The sound hit him like a wave. Jungkook's breath shuttered. His eyes filled instantly as his knees almost gave out. Jungkook didn't move. He just stared at his daughter, finally seeing him. Dada, Dada. Kia said it again, clapping her paint-stained hands and giggling proudly. Jungkook stood there in complete shock. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Slowly he turned to Wyan. How, how does she know? I showed her your pic. His eyes instantly filled. Jungkook pressed a hand to his mouth, breaking silently. You let her call me that. Can I touch her? Before he could respond, Kia had already reached him, her hands wrapped around his leg, paint-smudged fingers clutching his pant as she struggled to stand. Da, up, she said again. You can. She's not scared. With shaking hands, Jungkook bent down. His fingers hovered for a second, then gently rested Kia's back. Careful, reverent, like he was touching something sacred. She giggled at the contact. Jungkook let out a broken sob laugh. Hi, my angel, my baby. He slowly slid his hands under her tiny arms, lifting her with a care he had never known before. For a split second, he hesitated, then held her close. Kia squealed happily and slapped her little paint-covered palms on his chest, leaving bright smudges. Hey! He let out a laugh through tears. She giggled louder, completely pleased with himself, and patted him again like he was her favorite toy. Jungkook's arm tightened around her. She was warm, real, his, and with every small tap of her hand against his chest, something broken inside him began to mend. Her tiny handprints spread everywhere on his once white shirt. Bright colors simmered into one another as she pressed against him, her paint-covered body staining him, blue, yellow, red, messy, imperfect. Jungkook looked at himself, at the colors, and a soft smile broke through his tears. For the first time, he didn't feel dirty. He felt claimed. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers, letting the paint, the warmth sink in. If redemption had a color, he thought it would look exactly like this. Waya sighed again, folding her arms. Kia, look at you. You ruined his shirt. And yours too. I told you not to do this. Kia blinked, then lifted her tiny paint-stained hand and gently touched Jungkook's cheek, leaving a faint shimmer of color there too. Then she looked at Wyan completely serious, as if explaining something very important. My dad, she said, pointing to Wyan. Then she turned back to Jungkook, patting his chest proudly. My dad, she added. Jungkook's breath caught. His eyes filled instantly. Wyan fell silent, and in that simple innocent declaration, Kia had already chosen him. Jungkook kissed her cheek lovingly. You made my life colorful, my angel. Dada, she said, wiggling in his arms, on which Jungkook happily replied, Yes, my sunshine, I'm your dada. Wyan watched them with glassy eyes, so Jungkook pulled her close with another arm. Just like that, they shared the first family hug. They didn't need words anymore, only presence. A man who had broken, a woman who had injured, and a child who knew only love. Paint-stained clothes, tear-stroke hearts, and forgiveness still healing. Not a perfect ending, but a true one.